Welcome to the Jacob Wayne Show. I am your Jacob Wayne, and with me, as always, is the Splendiferous. Have I already used that one? I feel like I'm running out.
I think that's one we use a lot, but it's a good one. I mean,
Damn
that's
it.
fine.
Audacious. Kellen Gibbons.
Oh, I think that's a new one.
Yeah. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How you doing?
Doing good.
Nice.
We recorded our first interview today. We did that before this. So even though this is the intro you're seeing, we already did our interview with our buddy Michael Neale, or Mikey. He's the guitar player, or one of the guitar players in the band Spliff Tank here in Fort Collins, Colorado. He has spent some time in Logan, Utah, where we both grew up, or Cache Valley more specifically. And he's a good guy. And he also is, I think he defined himself as first generation American. His parents are both from Brazil.
Yep.
So he got me learnt on Brazil. I'm trying to think of what we could call these episodes, like when we have a guest that just really teaches us about something. It's like Jacob Wayne gets learnt on Brazil. And I think
there you go. Gets learnt.
And but yeah, it was a good interview. So far Zoom does the 40-minute chat, so whenever you have 3 people, it only goes for 40 minutes. So we did have to I felt, oh wow, we're actually getting a lot of information on one subject, and now we suddenly have a time limit. So bear with us.
We might have to pull out the pocketbook and pay for some Zoom, so unlimited meetings.
We might need to. And but it was a good interview, a lot of good stuff. We just might have to have him on for a part 2.
Yep.
So before we get into that interview, been eating anything good this week? Do any activities, anything that needs to be announced?
Let's see. Not really. I'm playing in a musical, and that opened up. That's what I've been doing with most of my time. So playing The Sound of Music. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
The good old Rodgers and Hammerstein favorite.
Yeah.
It's the most boring guitar part I've ever played. The musical is really not as bad. It's actually some really cool writing in the orchestra. The songs are a little cheesy, but that's a musical. But the guitar part is boring as sin.
What was the concept you were telling me about where it says it in the written music, like play if you want to or whatever?
Oh yeah, it's called tacit in the in musical books. So it says like optional tacit, and that's the whole thing about the book. Most of the songs don't even have a note written, and then half of the ones that do say optional tacit for most of them, and then the other half we cut out like half of those. So it's pretty funny. The guy. This theater company really shortens them. They cut out a lot of the fat. So like sometimes I'm like, how did the story happen? I feel like I'm missing like something. Like the story is just flying by. And then I realized like, oh yeah, we cut out like 4 songs in between there. That's why they just kind of moving along. Okay.
Well, that seems to be the case with a lot of musicals too. Like if it's a really well-known story, they're like, everybody knows the story. We're just gonna get the hits.
Get to the songs, yeah. And then they cut down my favorite things because apparently it's just the same verses over and over again. Like, and they just sing it back and forth like 3 times. So we only play it once. It's like 1 minute. It's like one of the biggest songs in the whole show, and it's like, oh, it's over. And there's also, I have a mandolin too. There's a mandolin parts throughout, and there's like, I'm pretty sure there's like exactly, there was 4 of them, and one of those got completely cut out, and they're each like 8 bars a piece or something. So like nothing. It's interesting.
Yeah, that would be an interesting job, editing down a play.
I want this job
musical.
because whoever does it sucks. So I want to do it. I want that job. I would be amazing at it.
Yeah, that's actually a total sort of a side note. Well, yeah, it's a tangent. Is I really hope that they do a film directed by Trey and Matt from South Park that do their Book of Mormon musical as a movie. I hope, now that it's had a long run and been able to make its money as that, I hope that they have their hands in some theatrical version. That's the whole story, because that is a fear, is that over time it'll still be really good and be funny, but after it's reinterpreted so many times, it maybe loses a little bit of the juice.
Yeah, I really want to see that show.
Yeah, we need to look into some version of it and just go see it. I'd be happy to pay $100 ticket again. That's what it was up in Seattle. It's if we grew up in Utah, it's like going to Mecca. You gotta go.
It's amazing. I want to see it. Oh.
Yeah. Other than that, no real new events on this end. Nothing too exciting culinary wise, other than I found out about Vietnamese crepes, which I want to try. Which is like bon choux or bon choux or something like that. So I'm going to be on an adventure to try to go find that here in Fort Collins. Other than that, let's just get into the interview.
Bring on Mikey.
All right, we'll see you next week and in the interview right now.
Studio magic.
Well. If it isn't Michael Neale, our first guest. First things first. What do you prefer to go as? I have a habit of calling you Michael Neale because I have some friends named Michael or Mike and friends named Neale, and you're in between, so I always just have a habit of saying it, Michael Neale. Michael Neale's hanging out. What do you prefer?
That's my professional name and more formal, but I've been telling people my name's Mikey. My good friends call me Mikey around here.
All right. Well, we'll call you Mikey then. I think we're good friends. But
I don't mind. Michael Neale. Michael.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Mikey, what are you sipping on?
I'm sipping on a Left Hand Brewing Rook Bait IPA.
Ooh.
I've always been impressed with Left Hand.
Yeah.
And decided to pick it up, and it's quite nice.
Hell yeah. I'll be joining you with a Copper Muse Distillery gin and hibiscus. Let's see if I can. There we go. And me and my boy Shockey kind of went way down that bottle more than we should have a couple days ago. So I'm just gonna have one and some black tea. How about you, Kellen?
I got the I think I might already had this one before. This is the Wyoming Pale Ale from Wind River Brewing Company. Always a favorite. I picked up a whole bunch of them when I was up there and slowly drinking through them. Already too close to running out.
Yeah. You just recently ran out of the WeldWorks stuff, I noticed.
Just the peanut butter. I still have a couple more WeldWorks. Just the peanut butter might have been my favorite one. That one hit a real nice spot.
Hell yeah. Well, currently we're doing our podcast video on Zoom, which, according to what I was reading, maybe it's different. If it is, feel free to write us at thejacobwayneshow@gmail.com. But when we have more than one person in the chat, well, more than two, we can only go for about 40 minutes. So I kind of want to get right in it with you on this episode, Mikey. And first and foremost, I kind of want to know what your projects you're working on right now, because we'll get into your history in a minute. But
sure. Yeah. Well, I'm still playing with my band Spliff Tank.
Hell
At
yeah.
the moment, we've been a group, same members for about 3 years now.
Nice.
And yeah, we're pushing it, booking shows now after the pandemic, and recording some material.
Nice.
And, yeah, so that's always an ongoing project and my main musical output.
Nice.
It's a whole lot of fun.
So when did you move out to Fort Collins? And what's the time difference between moving here and then starting that up?
I moved here fall of 2017 for grad school in water resources planning and management at CSU here in Fort Collins. And really just a year later, I met the guys and started the band.
Awesome.
Jack Moffitt, Brian Dickey, and Ryan Tooley.
Yeah, they're all really good guys. When I moved here in 2019, one of the first things we did, we ran into you guys up at Mishawaka for the Les Claypool Lennon Delirium.
Yeah.
We were kind of hanging out there. And that's kind of where you had seen Koshka at one point, right? And you were kind of like talking about that a little bit. I was like, oh, okay. And then we know each other through Brandon Shockey. He's been on this podcast. He's also in my band Gamma Pa. And yeah, I think not too long after that, went to my first Spliff Tank show, and you guys really rock it out, man. I like your work.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's how would you describe your sound?
Well, I thought of the term psych punk.
Yeah.
Psychedelic punk.
Nice.
And mixed with kind of that garage rock, post-punk feel.
Tell me if you agree. It kind of has like almost like a little bit of like spooky elements too, like kind of like Bauhaus, and I don't know. I didn't you do like a Pet Sematary Ramones cover?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
That's
So
something
maybe
we should bring back.
I think so.
That's kind of our vibe. Is kind of like a Halloween themed band or horror punk kind of. It's kind of something we go for. And
Nice.
so Halloween's a special time because we can bring out these spooky covers and kind of push that whole it's fitting to the holiday.
Yeah, I've liked the whole combination of vibes. The ingredients really work for me. And I mean, Halloween's, it's my favorite holiday. I had to think about it for a second, but I don't know. Like, I'm into punk. I kind of grew up being a little more of a metalhead. And, but over the last 5 years or so, I've really kind of come around and really started to enjoy punk rock. So even your guys' particular flavor of it, I've really enjoyed. So, and I mean, I think I've seen you about 5 or 6 times now, something like that. I think you guys are getting tighter and tighter and just sounding real good. So
thank you.
Keep
That's
it up.
nice to hear coming from you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's one thing that we approach. Like, Brian is the leader. He's written most of the material, but I help him. We write songs together, and I'll bring an idea, and he's good at formulating the song. But I grew up on heavy metal too, but rock and roll and punk as well. But we like to write just complete songs that are just, with those those good elements of a whole song, you know.
Yeah. You guys got some pretty mean hooks. They get in your head, kind of like walking around, as I usually say, walking around in the kitchen making a sandwich, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, so that's my musical focus, and I've been playing guitar since I was a kid, and I had a few guitar teachers that I will always remember in Logan, you know.
You ever get taught by this guy, Kellen?
No, but I enjoyed watching him on stage. I remember going to a USU jazz ensemble that you were playing in, and
oh, nice.
I remember Swamp Donkey.
Yep.
And you guys are awesome with your brother.
Yeah.
But
yeah, man. So, if that's what you're doing musically, you're working in the water resources thing now?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I just got a job working for the Fort Collins water utility, the water resources division.
Awesome. Oh, sweet.
So yeah, I'm stoked with that, and it's been really cool to be in public service and of, you know, a big organization with really competent people.
Yeah.
And the way they communicate and is really cool. It's something that's yeah, it's just cool to be a part of, and something very important, you know.
What are you doing for them?
Well, some of my tasks are like monthly water accounting, operation stuff. Like, you just got to keep track of what's coming in, what's going out. Because in Colorado, we have, you know, water law, as in the, you know, across the West, where every kind of amount has to be accounted for, and you have to return water to the river because, you know, if you use it, you kind of have to put it back in the river for people downstream to use it, and their rights, as it has been happening for over 100 years. So,
Cool.
So it's dealing with that, like the city's obligations. But it's really cool to be a part of, you know, the planning, long-term planning, and just
what I like about it, and tell me if you know, I'm inaccurate on this, but I find more often than not, when I talk to people our age or maybe a little bit younger than I am, and they're getting their degrees or their education, they're pursuing whatever careers they're pursuing, if they're not even going to college, it's seems to be community focused, environmentally focused. And I just think it's really cool. Obviously, we're a little concerned about taking care of the planet a little better than it has been. And so I don't know, when you told me about that, I thought that was like a really cool field to be working in, because I mean, I think you probably agree, compared to the history of water management in this country, we could probably really refine that and make it a lot better, don't you think?
Yeah, in some ways, I think.
Some ways they probably already done it.
It's difficult because the way it's kind of set in stone, the way of the water rights, especially in the West.
Sure.
I mean, in the West, we don't have enough water. In the East, they're drowning with climate change and more intensive storms. But in the West, yeah, there's definitely improvements to be made, because it's an industry that's kind of traditional, like they just do things how it's always done, and have the same methods. You know, you hear 1 in 100 year storm, you design for droughts, which is like 1 in 100 years is a probability. It's, you know, there's a 1% chance of that happening in any given year. So, and yeah, the West is having to make difficult decisions, and change how we use water, because we're irrigating intensive crops in the desert, and
Yeah.
That may not be sustainable. But so it's going to be like a transition from irrigating ag to cities. But
just a lot of things are more sustainable.
Yeah,
to put it simply.
It interests me to get involved with technologies to solve water management problems. Yeah, because that's the future.
Yeah, I'm all about it, man. That's really cool. So I'm happy you're involved in that and helping that all out. I won't go off on this, but I was watching a video today where I was looking into these solar plants that they want to put on the perimeter of the Sahara Desert, and how that could pretty much give the yearly power supply to Northern Africa and the Middle East. And then they're planning on channeling it up north, and it would cover about 15 to 20% of Europe's power needs by the time it was all said and done. And it's a huge project. And apparently it's already years into development under a German company firm. If I could remember it off the top of my head, I would. But I'm always fascinated by that, like what the solutions we're going to come up with to kind of recontextualize how we, operate with the environment.
Yeah.
But anyways, I'm glad you're doing that work, but I did want to get into kind of one main subject today with you as a guest. One of your shows, you and me were like tossing a couple back and we were chit-chatting, and I was remembering that you have a background that has to do with Brazil. And I was really fascinated by the conversation, and I can't remember exactly how I said it, but I was like, you should come on and talk about Brazil. I think a lot of Americans don't know enough about Brazil, if not most countries in the world. And, maybe part of that's you grow up in your own country, you kind of just focus on what's immediately around you. But I think also added to, us going into the future of things and recontextualizing things, it's important for us to all know more about the world we live in. And, not in that sort of way that it feels like sometimes on, like, say, Twitter or anything, where people are kind of shunning you for not knowing stuff. It's like, I don't know, just teach me, let me know more about it, and we can all kind of grow from it. So real quick, what is your background with Brazil? I know you've lived there at certain points, but yeah.
Well, my folks are from Brazil. They were both born in São Paulo, Brazil, and met there. And then they came to the States for grad school. And then I was born in Logan, Utah.
Okay,
my dad was a professor there.
They're all up at USU?
They're no longer there, but
they were.
He was a professor at Utah State. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
But he came to grad school. They first came to Colorado State, actually, here.
Okay.
But and then my grandparents came as children from one of them. My grandfather came from England. His parents, he was a child when he came to Brazil, and then another grandfather is from Norway. So yeah, it is somewhat of a unique background, and hopped to Brazil, and then I've hopped here. So in a way, I'm a first generation American.
That's cool.
Family. But yeah, and so I've been lucky to live in Brazil. Lucky to travel there for Christmas with my parents and my family and my little sister now.
Do you have a lot of family down there?
Yeah, on my mom's side, still they're all there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
And
is that mostly around Sao Paulo?
Sao Paulo, and her other brother is in Rio de Janeiro. So I've lived in both cities. And those are the two most famous cities.
Both on the coast, right?
Rio is. Sao Paulo is a little bit off the coast, and it's a little higher elevation, and the climate there is really nice.
Yeah.
It's temperate, while Rio gets really hot and humid.
Okay.
But
so here's something I think you could educate me on.
okay.
Is I was under the impression that a lot of the European colonization of Brazil was on the coast, and they couldn't really go inland that much because of the Amazon. And so that contributed to Portuguese getting more of a foothold when Spanish was coming down kind of more on the other side. Is that accurate? Or
Well, the Portuguese the Portuguese were there, they came to Brazil, the Brazilian coastline, before the Spanish were kind of took over. But then the Spanish and the Portuguese had an agreement that drew South America in a line, basically.
Okay.
And so the Portuguese got everything on the right of the line, and then Spain colonized the western half. But then I think over time that developed into different regions and countries.
That's a bad habit of the European colonizers, if not a ton of things, is when they would create borders, they'd always do that flat line. Like, I don't know, that must be the separation, right?
Yeah.
And we'll just make it like that. And you're like, no, due to geographics and cultures, it should probably be a lot more defined and gets adjusted. I mean, you'll see a lot of those flat lines in Africa as well that are just like European borders.
Yeah. It's called the Treaty of Tordesillas.
Tordesillas. All right. What year was that?
1494.
Okay. Wow. It's a lot earlier than I would have pictured, but yeah, I guess that makes sense.
So, a little bit about the history. From what I learned, I studied abroad in Rio and got to take my electives. I took, Brazilian culture and a history class. And, I can't speak in depth about everything because it's so massive, but an interesting
we only have
thing,
so much time, but
the Portuguese also brought people from Africa to serve as slaves, unfortunately. And, an interesting thing that slavery was occurring in Brazil much up till the end of the 18th century, right?
Yeah.
Later than here.
I didn't know that.
And as that progressed, I think, they had difficulties with the natives. The natives wouldn't work for them, they couldn't force the natives to work. But ultimately, the situation there is that those three cultures, the Africans, the Portuguese, and the natives combined, they melded and formed kind of a Brazilian ethnicity, right?
Yeah.
That's something that we didn't see here in the States as much.
No, it's true.
I think that's super interesting. And out of that, you have such a melding of cultures and language. We still, there's a ton of native words in modern Portuguese. You have culture from the food, both African and native food and Portuguese food, to create a Brazilian cuisine. Yeah. And everything about Brazil is kind of unique in a meld of of those three cultures.
That's great. Well, that's one thing that I've always kind of been vaguely aware of, but something I really loved about the country. So we'll hit some side notes here and there. On this podcast, we talk about food a lot, kind of tend to be a little foodies.
Yeah.
What's some of your favorite Brazilian cuisine? Like, what's a dish that you would get down there that might be a little unusual for the American palate, or maybe it's similar, but it's just like, it's so loved down there that it's like, I gotta get that.
One thing I have to mention is a thing called Cochinia, which is like a fried ball of it's so yuca root, like batter, but then they put chicken, like a mixture of shredded chicken inside. So there's lots of excellent like pastry, like savory pastries that you'll get at just like any bakery or bar.
Yeah.
And so just loads of those kind of things. But the big one is feijoada, which is all rice and beans.
Yeah, man. It's hard to go wrong with that, man.
And the whole country, everyone eats that almost every day. And then they also have that with farofa, which is also a yuca root, like a dried kind of, it's like a flour, but they refine it into a thicker kind of like thick, coarse powder kind of. So that's always on the side with your rice and beans, and also steak. Meats are huge.
Kind of like a lot of the skewer kind of thing, right? Different types of meat.
That's
kind of depends.
Yeah, skewers are common, but also just like a big hunk of picanha, top sirloin with the fat. You've been to a rodizio grill.
Yeah.
And like the favorite is the picanha, and it looks like a C, like the fat goes around and slices.
Yeah.
And they slice. So I actually worked at the Brazilian rodizio grill in Logan. There was one for a time.
Oh yeah,
I've still actually never
the Gaucho Grill.
Yeah,
Gaucho Grill. Thank you. Yeah, I worked there when I was at Utah State.
Nice.
So that was cool. And so I would wear the Gaucho, the typical, I had my uniform and like these pants that were like baggy, but they would go into my boots, my black boots and red scarf.
I like it.
So, but
yeah. No, that's great. I actually have still never been to a Brazilian steakhouse. I want to go so bad, but they can be a little more pricey up here. So, what was the festival that you threw here in Fort Collins? It was like kind of a celebration. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, it was kind of my take on a carnival party.
Okay, yeah.
Nice.
And so carnival is in February, before Lent or whatever, the Catholic.
Is it mainly a celebration of that? Like kind of connected with that, or?
I mean, originally, yes.
Yeah.
But nowadays, it's just a big party. And, Brazil is a mostly Catholic country, but for the most part, people aren't that, serious. Strict about it. Yeah. Very loose Catholic.
I think that's kind of an interesting thing because, like, you spent time in Utah, clearly a lot. Kellen and I grew up there. Like, as far as Mormonism goes, the main religion there, like, that's pretty strict. Yeah. People tend to, like, follow it.
Yeah.
Whereas it's like people I've met over time, they're just like, yeah, I'm Catholic, but, my family's Catholic. We're Catholic. Right. It's just casual. It's like they kind of pick and choose what they're going to really worry about, which I, honestly, I've always respected. You can always believe what you want, but you're just like, what? But at the end of the day, I'm human. I'm gonna do what I want. Yeah. And it's as long as I'm being a good person and not hurting people. That's kind of what always matters to me. But I've gotten the warning that we're running out of time a little bit, but I did set a timer as well. So I do want to, like, these things fly by, man. So I want to see what else we can maybe get into. One question I always have for friends of mine that travel or have lived outside of the United States, and if you can't think of anything off the top of your head, no big deal, but I always wonder what's something that is incredibly similar to the United States between the US and Brazil, and one thing that's really different?
Okay. Similar capitalism and our form of government.
Okay.
Pretty
similar?
The democracy there was shaped after ours. Yeah.
Okay. And I do want to get into a little bit of politics with a little bit more time. We don't got to go off.
Okay. And then, so yeah, it's a capitalist country. What else is similar? French fries.
They didn't start calling them freedom fries at one point.
No, they call them fried potatoes. They call them batata frita.
That's such a better name.
Yeah. Sounds fancier.
So they're similar in that regard, like institutionally. And the work ethic, they're very, especially in the cities, same culture of like work, make money, grind.
Yeah.
And then something super different. I think the Brazilian people just have some kind of shared, like, how can I say this? I wrote something down. A richness to their personality, or kind of like a love and like a warmth, kind of like a more intensity, you know.
At your the Carnival celebration you threw, I was talking to a Brazilian friend of yours, or maybe you didn't know him that well, but he was at CSU, and I was sitting there talking with him about it. I think he described that a little bit, and he did have a name for it, but yeah, it's a lot more outgoing, like loving, like I'll hug you, and you know, it's like, do I know you that well? Like, not really, no, but you know, we're partying, like, hey, have some of this drink, like.
Yeah.
And it's like, for an American, you're kind of like, whoa, I don't know how well I know you, buddy. And
right.
Well, Americans tend to be a little more like, let me figure out what you're all about first. But no, it seems like very more forthcoming and friendly.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's good. My clock says here we got about 12 minutes ish. So I could think of two other things I wanted to ask you. We could do the kind of fun one, maybe. I don't even know if it's fun. Maybe it's not. Or get into politics a little bit. We could do one or the other. But
we should touch on music.
Yeah, I did want to get on to music too. So I'll hit you with the quick one. Brazil's flag. I always thought it was like an awesome looking flag. Some of my favorite colors, like, and it's got a really unique design. Is there more you could tell us about that?
Well, the stars in the middle and the blue circle, the Southern Cross is there. Okay. And that's a constellation you can only see from the Southern Hemisphere.
I didn't know that.
And Dio,
Crosby, Stills,
Black Sabbath has a song called "The Sign of the Southern Cross."
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Well, so does Crosby, Stills, and Nash, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's cool. No, yeah, it was always a really beautiful flag to me. Like back when I would play FIFA video games, I'd pick Brazil purely because of the colors and the flag. I was like, awesome.
Yeah, it is pretty.
Yeah, tell me a little more about the music down there, man. Before you get started, my only real exposure to it was being a metal head when I was younger. There was the band Sepultura, and then later they broke off. And then there was still Sepultura, but then they did Soulfly.
Yeah.
And the dude had that one string instrument that's kind of percussive. I always forget the name of it.
Beating bow.
Yeah. Cool. So, and they just had such a really cool tribal sound to them. And I was immediately like, that's awesome. And they'd get huge percussion groups, you know, behind them for some of their live performances. And I was just like, that would be incredible. But tell me more about Brazilian music.
Well, one thing with Sepultura, they're incredible, and they took over the world. I mean, turned heads across the world for that integration of native culture and the roots, you know. So, but really, Brazilian music is a whole world in itself, and it's so important to them, to us. So briefly, so I think I could talk about samba, which is the music of carnival and the more popular music.
Okay.
Traditional and very, rhythm driven and sambando, or like the act of dancing samba. So that's the music that's played during carnival, which is a lot of fun and all. Then there's bossa nova, which is a form of jazz that's also extremely popular around the world. Everyone's heard those tunes before, by the likes of Tom Jobim and João Gilberto. Really classic and amazing music. And I love bossa nova. I think it's incredible. And so that's something you can always turn on when you just want to relax or like enjoy an evening with friends and stuff, or a lover. And so then there's that. And then I also want to touch on Tropicalia movement in the 60s, which was the psychedelic rock movement. Okay. And you got Gilberto Gil, who started out of that, Caetano Veloso, who came out of there. And these guys, during the 60s, there was a military dictatorship, and these were like fight songs against the government, and they were being censored. People were disappearing. Even Caetano Veloso and Gilberto Gil went on exile to London, and they continued to write songs there. But what we saw was, political songs masked in the poetry, or like in the lyrics, that, they had, the meaning was underlying, it wasn't just right out, fuck the police. It was
so more subtle,
was in there,
poetic,
more subtle, to stay under the radar and stuff. So it's just so rich. I recommend everyone to explore. If you want me to suggest some things, I can.
Yeah, if you could give a quick list of people that people should listen to, or artists and bands. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I would say Djavan. He's a popular music guy. So, but then bossa nova, João Gilberto and Tom Jobim. But then Os Mutantes, the Mutants. Os Mutantes was a big band in the Tropicalia movement in the 60s. All right. And then from there you can
kind of branch out.
You'll find stuff on YouTube. And awesome. So, and there's a whole rich, there's, when I lived in Sao Paulo, I lived next to this street called Augusta Street. And this was like the rock street, and kind of like a real destination for rock and bars. But people of all walks would come and like come for the nightlife. So I lived near there, so I would go out there like on my own and just meet people, like talk to people. And one guy approached me because he assumed that I was American, rightly so. But then we got to talking, and he was a musician called Rafa Pagani. And so I would see him play, and we would talk. Just great guy, friendly. And he was friends with this band Cachorro Grande, Big Dog in Portuguese. And they're one of the biggest modern rock bands in Brazil. And I was a fan of theirs. And even one day I met him on the street, and he was with them, and they invited us all up to their apartment. So I got to hang out for a night with members of Cachorro Grande, which was cool.
Oh, nice.
Sounds like a great time.
Yeah. Listen to records like all night.
Hell yeah.
Oh, cool.
And but it's just a huge world of music, and it's really worth checking out. And
so genre-wise, samba, bossa nova, and then like psychedelic.
Yeah, Tropicalia.
Tropicalia. Okay.
And then popular music by Gilberto Gil. He's phenomenal. He's done it. He's done it all. Awesome. And
well, we are kind of almost there, so I did want to touch on this real quick. One way that Brazilian news did come into my life a couple of years ago was kind of during all the Trump stuff. And then there was Bolsonaro, who a lot of people defined as like the South American Trump. And I was just kind of curious if you could kind of go over if you think that's accurate. If it is really similar, if it's not as similar as, American media makes it sound, and kind of where the country's at now.
It's uncannily similar.
Yeah.
He's the Trump of the tropics, as they say.
Oh, okay.
So that is something similar, because he was elected in the same way, through misinformation and through social media. Fake news,
kind of going after neoliberalism or something like that.
Yeah, the real fake news. Yeah. The original, the OG fake news, which is just misinformation spread over Facebook. And there they use WhatsApp. So everyone, like the whole country's on WhatsApp. So that's a means to share just videos that come out of nowhere, right?
There's this show I'm watching called The Boys, where there's this one character who's trying to turn public opinion, and it's very much a commentary on today. And she's like, has a team of meme generators that just creates these quick little takes of memes and political opinion, and just infesting social media with it. And then her line is, once you see it on your uncle's Facebook page, it's working. So perhaps Tim there, it's like, once you see it on WhatsApp from your uncle, you're like, oh boy.
Yeah, very similar. And he came to power from a just unsatisfaction with the government and the leftist party, who was in power for a long time.
Kind of that middle of the road, not really that liberal, or kind of corporate liberal sort of thing. I feel like I read that in an article once. It was the similarity of like Hillary and Obama here. People were like, well, how much liberal stuff were they actually accomplishing? And then people were just kind of worn out, but totally went the wrong direction, and went for a Trump type populist guy, but he's like saying he's going to give you the world, and no, he's not going to give you anything.
It was the same thing, because they were like, he's different. He's not like the rest of them, and he's not going to be corrupt and all this stuff, because Brazil is one of the most corrupt countries in the world, and that's how it's been for forever, right? So
we're gonna drain the swamp mentality. Maybe this one populist guy can take care of it all. Like, he'll say
this guy has no regard for decency, like Trump. He's from the military times, the dictatorship times, and he fantasizes on bringing those things back, and he had like this pathetic like military vehicle parade. That was just like pathetic. And he gets a lot of shit, and so his popularity is going down. So we'll see what happens.
See if we can get him out of there. You feel like it's going in a good direction?
I hope so. They're getting the vaccines getting out, and there isn't one interesting thing. There's less like hesitancy to get the vaccine. It's not as politicized.
Oh, that's good.
And they're like, they're asking for it. Like, it doesn't matter. They trust the health departments, right?
Oh man, imagine. Well, not to kind of.
They still struggle with that. There's still people who are like, and they're Bolsonaro supporters who are not going to take the vaccine.
I think sadly more and more seeing some stuff from the Spanish flu and stuff from today, there's always going to be that subsection of society that's just like, nope, I did the research myself. I'm a better scientist than the scientists. And they're like, oh, shit. But not to cut it off there, but we have hit our 40 minutes, so I would hate for this video to cut off. So I just want to say thank you for being our first guest, and I feel free to come back on in the future and we can get more into that or just into other subjects in general.
I'd love to. I have some, next time I can say some funny stories and stuff. But this was a good intro to Brazil.
I think so too. And I hope I get to see that country someday. That's my big goal. Go out and travel more. I just got to make a little more of that money to be able to do it. But, what can you do?
Get out there and I'll show you around Brazil.
Hell yeah. We should see if we can plan something like that. But once again, thank you for being our first guest and best of luck with the work with Spliff Tank and the universe. God bless Brazil.
Thank you, Jacob. Thank you, Kellen. Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was fun.
You'll see.
Yeah, have a good one. Thank you for listening to the Jacob Wayne Show. If you would like to contact us, please write us at fakoshka@gmail.com. That is FAKOSHKA@gmail.com. You can find us on Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube. Simply search The Jacob Wayne Show and it should pop right up. Make sure you like and subscribe and leave a review and share this podcast with your friends. Please write us. It helps add content to the show and makes the show even better for you, the listener. Thanks for tuning in. Welcome to the Jacob Wayne Show.